people just lie on the beach and cry.
Hello and welcome to Holding Heritage. This is a space to explore and have honest conversations around the Asian North American experience. We'll focus on Canadian refugee stories, family, heritage, and bridging generational gaps. My name is Holly. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello and welcome back to another Exploring Roots episode where we focus on real refugee, immigrant, and childhood storytelling directly from refugees and immigrants themselves. This episode is part 3 of a 3-part series with Sinh Ha, my dad. In part 1, we explored what it was like for my dad growing up as a young boy in North Vietnam. Part 2, we went into a lot about my grandpa having been put in jail. And in today's part 3, you'll hear about my dad's memories of the day his family went down to the beach to board the refugee boat to Hong Kong. So let's dive in and pick up right where we left off. It's the late 70s in Vietnam. The Vietnamese government made a deal with my grandma. If they agreed to leave the country, they would release my grandfather so that he could leave on the boat with them. At that time, having to put your trust in the government was, of course, less than ideal, but my grandma had no other choice. She had already sent my dad's 2 eldest brothers off in boats to Hong Kong to avoid any further trouble with the Vietnamese government, leaving her afterwards to shoulder so many challenging tasks like having to sell their house, finding and arranging enough 24-karat gold to pay for their family's escape, which were 6 of them, including her, my grandfather, my dad, his 2 sisters, and little brother. She also had to figure out how they were going to make it to the beach, packing important belongings, preparing food for the trip, etc. When she finally was able to find a boat and captain that had space for their family, they were given a date, a beach, and a time of departure. These details were relayed to the government, and whether my grandpa would show up and make it in time to leave with the rest of the family was uncertain. In preparation for leaving, my grandma wanted to sell their house to get money for their journey. Initially, the Vietnamese government allowed them permission, and they even had already secured a deal. And the buyer was even living in their house before they even moved out. My dad remembers this vividly. At the last minute, though, the government took their word back and prohibited my dad's family from selling their house. So the buyer had to move out and the house was left unsold in the hands of the government.
But they just do whatever they feel like, right? Mm-hmm. They want to keep the house for free. That's what they want, right? So at the end, we don't allow to sell the house. And the guy move in, he have to move out. My mom find the boat, got the room for us, and got the date at which harbor. And they say, okay, yeah, that's fine, okay. They don't release my dad. They don't allow my dad to go home. They said, now they know the day and the time and the harbors we are at. They said, before we leave, they will bring my dad out to the boat, and then we can go. So we have to trust them. And then the night before we go out to the boat, we have to find a place close to the harbor to stay. We can't just leave in the morning and then make it on time, right? So we have to find a place for the whole family with our luggage, and then in an early morning we can go out to the boat. Mm-hmm. But that is very, very hard because at that time nobody's even want to be close with us, right? Because they're afraid they're gonna get into trouble. But luckily, we have one. His family is my mom got brothers. His wife family. Mm. That means they are Vietnamese, but they willing to take us in and allow us to stay at their home for overnight and provide us with food and this and that. So that is very, very lucky, and I think they are very, very good people.
So to reiterate, this family that opened their home to my dad's family at that time was my grandma's godbrother's wife's family. Back then, from what I've heard from my own and many other families, having godparents, god-grandparents, or god-siblings was very common. In my grandma's case, my dad tells me that there was an incredibly kind couple that used to see my grandma selling fruits and veggies at the local market, and over time they became very close. They loved my grandma and chose to take her in as a goddaughter. They also had a son of their own, and this son's wife's family was the family that offered their home to my grandma. Who would have known that years and years later this connection would result in this incredible act of generosity? At that time, many Vietnamese families would isolate themselves from Chinese families, not wanting anything to do with them since helping Chinese families was seen as a criminal act. So the gravity of this gesture meant so much to my grandma and her family, and while my dad was recounting these memories with me from his point of view, I could really feel how much deep emotion and gratitude he carries over this.
So for this family do that for us is, yeah, I remember till now, and even till now, their family is still back in Vietnam. We still keep in really close. And yeah, we stayed there one night, and I remember the next morning, very early in the mornings, around 4 or 5, it's still dark. Yeah, we leave very, very quiet. We don't want anybody to know, because if people know, neighbor know, then they might get in trouble, right? And then yeah, we go out to the harbors. So we get out to the harbors. There's a lot of boat there. There's a lot of boat. It's not just our boat. At first we thought maybe it's just our boat, but we get there, it's like 20, 30 boat parked there. But all the boat is old. It's all old fishing boat and small. And every boat packed with 4 people. And at that beach, oh, it's crazy. There's all these young people, families just come to say goodbye, or friend. And there's a situation with the family half Vietnamese and half Chinese. For example, if the wife is Vietnamese and the husband is Chinese, the wife might not want to go because she have old parents, and she want to stay. So family broken. Some divide the kid up. Yeah, it's you don't understand until you see the situation. People cry.
I watch my dad flood with waves of emotions as he continues telling the story, taking long pauses of thought and remembrance.
Each time in the day there's boat leaving, and each time the boat leaves, you hear people cry.
His eyes seem to gloss over every time a new memory enters his mind.
Yeah, for our families, I remember that night we left that families, and the wife take us out to the harbors, and I remember she's stand up there. Well, she don't want to be seen with us, right? So she stand far away.
I sit patiently knowing how tough it must be to recall and vocalize memories like this. Tears slowly rolling down his cheeks now as I reach over for a tissue on the coffee table to hand it to him. As he dabs his eyes and takes breath after breath, the room feels heavy, like time has slowed.
Yeah, I remember she's standing behind a tree. Yeah, you met her last time you went back to Vietnam, that lady?
Oh, I don't remember. I think there was something incredibly powerful in the expressions of gratitude and these memories of all those who have helped our families along the way in whatever capacity they were willing and able to. They have forever impacted the lives of not only our generations, but all of our families' generations to come. And I think that's really, really special.
Yeah, but she's really, really nice. Because she might get in very, very big troubles if people know, and then not just for her, but for the whole families too. So they take a big risk just for us, right? So yeah, I'm really grateful for that, and I remember, yeah, she stood there just watch, and we go down to the boat and sit there and wait for they have the time for the boat to leave, and we just wait at the boat, and hopefully the police will take my dad down like they promised, right? So I'm not sure what time the boat is supposed to leave, but we was down there and wait for many hours and didn't see him. And at the end, it's like half an hour to the time, and didn't see him, and then 15 minutes, and then 5 minutes, and when the time come, he's still not showing up. So we asked the captain to wait more, right? And I think they even wait for an extra hour or so. And my dad's still not showing up. And at that time, of course, we all know they lie, right? So, yeah, they decide to, well, I have to leave. What can we do now? So at that time, you can't go back. You have nothing to go back. You have no place to live. And then all the money we have, we pay for the boat already. And on the boat with my grandma there too. So yeah, half of our families are there.
So in the boat my dad boarded, there were around 140 people squished into a small fishing boat. My dad, being just a kid at the time, remembers being able to touch the water with his arm off the side of the boat because it was weighed down so heavily with the extreme number of people. My grandma, my dad, his two sisters, little brother, and his grandma, along with my dad's two uncles and their families, were on the same boat. This totaled 16 people from my dad's family on the boat alongside many other families. During the peak years the boat people refugees were fleeing, which were 1978 to 79, most boats were old fishing boats, sailboats, rowboats, some made out of steel, some wood, many without motors, and all definitely not equipped or built to hold the hundreds of people who were usually packed on. Most often, these boats were so crowded that there was no room to do anything other than stand or just sit with your legs pulled to your chest. Boats overflowing with people of all ages, newborn babies to grandparents, children, teenagers, many of whom who had never been on boats for extended periods of time before that, resulting in most people, except for the captains who were usually fishermen themselves, becoming violently seasick, unable to eat, hydrate, and properly sustain themselves during their journeys. Something that happened often when these boats departed from the beaches, especially ones without motors, was Coast Guards would tow boats outward into what was considered international waters. This was to make sure boats wouldn't turn around and try to go back to Vietnam, and it also released the country from any sort of responsibility over these refugees. The tragic truth is that many of these boats were towed out to be left to drift, starve, sink, and many also died from being extremely ill-equipped and prepared, as if anybody could even be prepared for something like this.
At that time, the boat have to leave. Everybody cried. In the boat, like it doesn't matter, it's friend and people just lie on the beach and cry, and because at that time nobody know if they're gonna survive, they're gonna go to Hong Kong, they're gonna get there, because for the young kid like us, we don't know the dangers, right? But for the adult, I know they know the risk. I don't think they even think we have 50% chance, right? Because all we hear is that, we're gonna die out there, this and that. That day, we left the harbor with a lot of boats at the same time, because the Vietnamese Coast Guard, they are watching us, right? So they have boat out there. They make sure we leave and don't go back, right? They're afraid if we just go out and then come back. So we left at least 10 other boats during the day. At that time, we don't remember much, because we were quiet so much when we know my dad not coming, and we kind of don't think anything else, right? Thing like that is hard to talk about.
Yeah, it is. Do you
That's
feel
why
like it feels better though, like when you're able to talk about it?
yes, of course. I guess when you talk and let it out, and the more you talk, the easier it gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's good if we can talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing with our boat is that we prepare a lot of food. And my second uncle, he's supposed to be the chef, the cook.
For the whole boat?
For the whole boat. That's the plan, right? Everybody in the boat said who gonna do what. Our boat tow a little dinghy, like a little canoe.
Yeah.
And in that canoe, we have to fit a lot of food in there too. Because the main boat is just too heavy, right? So we fit whatever we can in that little canoe or dinghy. And in there, I remember we even have a live pig in there.
What?
And there's live chicken, and duck hang on the side of the boat.
Oh my goodness.
Well, because we have to prepare a lot of food, right? For 140 people. There's no refrigerators, and there's no freezers. So we can't just take meat with us, right? It'll go bad. So we try to leave it alive. But that is just, you never been in that situation, you don't know. Yeah. Everybody thinks it's just so simple, just take with us, and they don't think about what's going to happen out there, right? Nobody have experience. And nobody talk about seasick, and which that's the big problem. Just after we left the harbors, I think within an hour, everybody got seasick and can't do anything. When you got seasick, all you can do is just lie there, and you can't even eat. You're so up. So at the end, my uncle can't even cook. First of all, nobody can eat, but nobody can cook. Because when you got seasick, you can't do anything, right? But luckily, the captain family, right? They're fishing all day life. So that family, he have children. There's 2 girls They are really tall and big. I remember I'm a little kid, but look at them, they're even taller and bigger than my older sister. So they don't get seasick. So at the end, they take over the cooking and they cook for us and then ask us to try to eat. When we got so hungry, you have to eat. Right? But I remember mostly just really little. You can't eat too much. Right? And I got seasick and I don't remember much out there anymore until the storm hit and then everybody wake up.
So, the boat that my dad and his family left Vietnam in was planning on their first destination being a harbor called Bay Hai in China. This was a really common first destination for many refugee boats fleeing from North Vietnam and wanting to go to Hong Kong. From Bay Hai, it would be another short boat journey to Hong Kong. But a few days into my dad's boat journey, they hit a really bad storm. Because of this, they had to retreat into a nearby beach, not quite hitting their target of Bay Hai. At this beach, they had to live and stay for a couple months to repair the boat, find more money, recover from the first leg of the trip, etc., etc. My dad's family was split into 3. His father left behind in jail, his 2 older brothers having already left and having heard no news from them since, and then the rest of them on the beach waiting to head to Hong Kong.
So at that moment, my family is kind of divided into 3, right? The oldest 2 oldest brothers left, and then my dad stayed behind. And we don't know what's going to happen to him. And just think at that time, even if they let him out, where he's going to live, how he's going to survive, right? So there's a lot of things in our mind. I'm pretty sure my mom is she a tough lady. And she have to worry for so many things. Her family broken into 3 and now worry about surviving, and then I don't know what's going through her mind. But for my parents, I think that time both of them go through so much, but out of their hand, they can't do anything, right? Just after we leave, we never think we're gonna have chance to see my dad again, right? Because first of all, we don't know if we're gonna make it to Hong Kong, and we don't know if he gonna stay in prison until he die, or they're gonna let him out. If they're gonna let him out, where he's gonna stay, we have no ideas, right? There's no way to contact, and we think, well, if only case that if he got out and he can find enough money to go to Hong Kong, then we might have a chance to meet him, right? Because we know he's not going to go back to China for sure. And he already know that when we go to Hong Kong, but it's like a really, really long shot. It's like just a hope, it's a dream. And then another hope is that we can make it to Hong Kong, and then my 2 older brothers can also make it to Hong Kong. Then we can see or meet him in Hong Kong, because that time we don't know where they go, if they make it or not, right? They left about 3 or 4 months before us, and we have no news, didn't receive anything. Where they at, if they make it to Hong Kong or not, we don't know.
So there was so much uncertainty for my dad's family at that time. On the beach where they stayed before going to Hong Kong, every day there was a refugee market where residents from the area would come down and buy things from the refugees, who would have many of their belongings sprawled out. They sold these to gather enough gold to continue their trip to Hong Kong. If you want to hear more about that part of the journey, in episode 2, my dad talks quite a bit about it, including some of his experiences in the refugee camps in Hong Kong and how they eventually got sponsored to Canada. When finally in Hong Kong, during their stay at one of the refugee camps, my dad tells me that every day there would be buses of new refugees entering the camps, and every day crowds of people, including my dad and his family, would gather around the windows and doors to watch them all unload off the bus, eager to see familiar faces. After weeks and months of no luck, one day they couldn't believe their eyes. They saw their two brothers walk off a bus, and there they were, one step closer to their reunited family. Months went by living in refugee camp after camp in Hong Kong, and still no sign of their father. When they were sponsored to Canada, they had to leave without him and arrived in Nova Scotia still without any word or update on his status. My dad's family was sponsored through a church group, and their sponsors were the ones who opened up a Red Cross request and search for their father in Vietnam. After a few months of searching, they got news that my grandpa had been released from prison finally and was living in the same area in which they used to. However, they didn't allow him to move back into their house and was put in a warehouse-type living situation. Once they got an address where they could send letters, that's how they communicated. The sponsoring process was grueling, long, and extremely tedious. In order for my grandpa to do paperwork needed, he had to travel to Saigon, which is in South Vietnam, and they lived in North Vietnam. So my grandpa had to take multiple trips down to the south to complete paperwork for sponsorship, many times having to stay in Saigon for extended periods of time. The sponsoring process was not easy and not short. It took at least 6 years for my grandpa to actually get approved. And in the end, it was about 10 years between the time that they last saw him to when they finally got to meet again in Canada. My dad tells the story of how my grandpa arrived.
So yeah, finally he got come over 86 and we didn't even know. That's crazy thing.
You didn't know that he came?
Yeah,
the sponsors didn't tell you, or?
Well, no, I mean, we stay in Halifax just for 1 year, right? And then we moved to Calgary, right? So when we moved to Calgary, at that time, we don't know English. So when you move, then you're supposed to let the government, the sponsors office know your address and your phone number, right? Because that time, whenever you move, the phone number is changed, right? So we moved so many places, like every few months or a year. So I remember that time, somehow the office did get our address and our phone numbers. So they allowed they come over, and we didn't even know. Right? Normally, they will let you know, say, yeah, okay. Your dad will come what day, what flight, what time, right? And then families can go out and pick up, right? But in our case, we didn't even know. And I remember that day.
So while my dad, his sisters, and my grandma were on their way to Edmonton to visit some family, my grandpa was arriving at the airport.
To visit our cousin up there, right? And then there's only Pak, that's Chris' dad.
So Chris is one of my older cousins. His mom is my dad's older sister. So his dad was married to my auntie at that time, and he was the only one at home that day.
And then Vicky dad at home, but Vicky dad is staying in different house.
Vicky is also another one of my older cousins, and her dad is my dad's eldest brother. So he was in his own home not far away.
Right, so only Chris' dad at home, but Chris' dad didn't even know Yeye, right?
Right.
So we are not home, and then Yeye got to the airport, and
Calgary?
In Calgary, nobody picked him up, and he said he waited from the morning till the afternoon, and nobody picked him up, and nobody showed up. And luckily, he got the letters from us. So the letter have the address, right? But he don't speak English, he don't have money. So Yeye stayed there for almost a whole day. And at the end, he figured out, maybe there's nobody come and pick him up. So he go outside and he see a taxi. So he just give the letter to the taxi. And the taxi is, this guy is very smart too. So he basically know this guy don't speak English and this is where we want to go, right? So the taxi guy take him to this address. That is where we live. But when he get there, so we are not home. So the taxi guy says, yeah, this is the house. So you go into the house and
How did he pay for it?
he don't get money to pay, right? So the taxi guy wait for him. So he go into the house, and then Chris' dad come out, and then he said, "Who are you?" And then Chris dad said, "Who are you?" But by that time, then Chris dad kind of realized, this is maybe my father-in-law, right? And then
They were already married at that time.
yeah, he already married. So by that time, he realized, right? So my dad, said, "Well, you go out and pay taxi guy," right? And then he realized it's right? And then he called Papa, and he said, "Well, I think
Your dad is here."
And then Papa said, "You kidding?" So and then Papa come over, and we before we get to Edmonton, get to our cousin's house, okay, Papa already called them, right? And said, our dad come in, but we are coming. So as soon we got to the house in Edmonton, and we parked the car, and then they said, "Oh, your dad coming." We said, "Oh, come on, you kidding? You joking?" He said, "No, it's true." So we go back, and then we drive all the way. I mean, it's so...
I watched my dad as he looked like he was replaying a moment in his head, not being able to exactly pinpoint how that felt, to be reunited after so long under such trying and difficult circumstances. A mixture of happy and excited, but also trauma and hardship.
Then almost 10
Wow.
years since you've seen him last?
Okay, so 6 years in Canada, right? 1 year in Hong Kong, that's 7 years. And then before that, he's already in prison 3 years, so about 10 years.
Wow.
And there we have it. This concludes this 3-part series with my dad, Sinh Ha. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to his perspective and his memories. Every time I remember these incredible family stories, I feel so lucky and grateful to be in the position that I am today, having the opportunities and options I have within such a close reach. And the cherry on top of all of this learning of my family and heritage is that I get to see firsthand the impact that sharing and opening up has on not only my parents, but my family and my friends. It's a sort of ripple effect outwards, and I'm very excited to continue on this journey. So thank you again for tuning in, and I will meet you back here again very, very soon. Bye! Music by Blue Wednesday. Be sure to check him out. He's amazing. And as always, Holding Heritage is created, produced, and geographically based on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Tsleil-Waututh and Comox nations of the Coast Salish peoples.